Wait, oh, that's not what I want. All right.
It's about 6 months
It's the clock 5 minutes past.
or so.
Over so, thank you. I'm slow with the clock for that.
Or 5:59.
That's the official time.
That's what it says on my clock.
Okay. Okay. It is. So, Ronnie, are you going to put the agenda up on the screen? Can you just play?
No, my IT guy broke that today.
We built it,
No, IT.
or IT did.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are the paper packages?
Yes.
No, it's just the summary results.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's nice meeting you, on, TV, CC.
They couldn't make it.
But it is being recorded, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, I'm still trying to pull up the agenda. Good. Okay, I think we ought to go ahead and get started. Just a brief reminder, that this is a workshop. No public comment will be taken at the meeting, no action will be taken at this meeting. The City of King City Council and Planning Commission will be meeting today, for the purpose of holding general discussion on the agenda items listed. So, what we really want to be able to do is, number one, for everybody here, I see we do have a couple of our guests, and it's probably a good idea for us to just go around and introduce ourselves so everybody knows who's here today, and that includes the Planning Commission. So I want to thank you all for being here, much appreciated. Why don't we start with John? John, introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm John Walter. I'm on the King City Planning Commission. I've been on there for about 2-3 years.
Okay. All right. Laura?
I'm Lori Petrie, I'm also on the planning commission, I can't remember how long. New Year.
And you are the chair, is that
I
correct?
am the chair.
Okay. All right, that sounds good.
Carol Bellows, planning commission. And Central Planning Commission, basically brand new.
Okay, thank you for being here.
Mike Weston, city manager, King City.
Ron Smith, city recorder.
Kate Moore, city councilor.
Michael Paulson, city councilor.
Can we get some names?
Jamie Thunder, council president.
Michael Kennedy, councilor. Ernie Hopple, chief of police.
Okay.
And then is, are we putting on Annie and, Sean?
Nobody's on there yet.
Okay.
Okay,
I just sent Ann a text message.
okay.
This is for you.
Is this the only TV that's gonna be on? Or is
No.
that gonna be on?
No,
No,
neither one of them are gonna be on.
Oh, okay,
Okay, because, apparently there's some issues going on with the IT.
all right.
Today seems like a cursed day of, IT, it's like there's something in the air today, so we just have to roll with it.
Essentially, in our efforts to get a hybrid system going, the IT department disconnected our big screen. And has not linked them back into the system, so,
In order to get the Zoom going.
yeah.
Oh, I see, okay.
So in order to have Zoom hybrid availability, we ended up losing our screen.
Okay.
And we will have to fix that, right, because we do want our
We're trying.
hybrid, yeah, so eventually they will, we trust that we'll sort it out.
Ridiculous.
Well, it's not, really, let's put it in perspective, because really this is, a process that we have to really develop now. You know, we wanna go back to live meetings, true, and we're gonna have to talk about that too. I mean, because we got some things going on that we should be aware of and concerned about in terms of the cases
Yeah.
of, COVID-19, being on the rise in Oregon. You know, we had almost 2,000 cases the other day, and we do need to be concerned about that. And, so we're gonna have to think about this moving forward. I know that we're planning on having a live, council meeting on, 18th, I believe, that's correct. And I just want us to really think about that. We don't have to answer that question right now, but I want us to rethink, the importance of being safe as opposed to being all together in one room. Okay, so, because really, the thing is, what we really have to be concerned about, I'm looking at these guys who have young children who can't be vaccinated. And we do really have to make sure that we protect you guys so that you can protect them. Okay, so, so moving forward, the first item on the agenda, we did the introduction. What we're gonna talk about first is the American Rescue, Plan Act funding. So Mike, you're gonna lead us through where we stand today.
Before we check the audio, ensure this is working for everyone else on the online.
Well, I don't have anybody.
Nobody.
I don't have any counselors on there yet.
There was a text from Shauna asking if.
I did, I
Okay.
sent that to her a little bit ago.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay, Mike.
All right, so essentially ARPA is the American Rescue Plan Act, passed recently, in the Biden administration. It's basically a payout to all the local cities and, local governments, fire departments, police departments, basically to fill the gap of lost funding from the COVID, situation. COVID emergency crisis, loss of tax revenue, loss of, retail revenues, loss, just to basically fill the gap and get us back up and moving. So there's a couple things that we can use those funds for. The ARPA fund calls out 4 things. It calls out broadband, it calls out water infrastructure, and it calls out essential pay or premium pay for essential employees. And, what was the 4th one, Ernie? Do you recall?
Broadband, city water, sewer.
I think, like,
Has a pay, or, wait, no, that was.
Provisions of government services.
You covered it, and it was the loss of income.
right, yeah, the loss of income. So it was the loss of income provision, the essential worker, the, broadband, and any water sewer infrastructure. So of those 3 things, we can take a portion to the lost revenue and put that toward it. Just so everyone knows what kind of number we're talking about, I believe the number rounds out to really close to about $948,000. So we're right and close to that. So, we have some lost revenue that equates to maybe $100,000 to $200,000 that we could easily attribute to, COVID reductions. We have, essential, pay, essential employee, which we could probably put a couple $100,000 to. We have, the purple line, infrastructure line extending, that we're trying to work with Clean Water Services to extend recycled water out to, the Highlands, 131st Street, and, the Bonneville power lines, as well as the King City Community Park. And potentially the Highlands as well, or not the Highlands, but, Edgewater on the Tualatin as well, if they want it. So,
the Highlands, that's the common area,
yeah, so the purple water is basically water. It's been cleaned and recycled and made available for municipalities to use for any type of landscaping, or it's just not supposed to be for human consumption, right? Although it has been cleaned to that level, it's safe to drink, but, ideally you don't want to drink it. So, the idea is that we would use it for our infrastructure instead of paying for city water that's been, you know, cleaned and chlorinated and put all this effort and energy into to make it potable. So, we're working with, Joe Gall and, Mark Jockers from Clean Water Services on mechanisms and means in which we could partner together to extend that purple line. And we're working on getting a proposal pulled together to see about doing that. My guess is that between doing a grant program for, you know, some of the essential workers in the city, essential workers here, essential workers, like at the gas pump or grocery outlet, or even throughout our city that had to basically interact and deal with customers and things throughout the time, that in conjunction with the extension of the purple line, and then we're also, I'll segue into it later, and then the lost revenues, we could pretty much use up most of that initial $948,000. Additionally, there's $1 million or so floating out there, from Senator Thatcher's group to work on this broadband, circle. It's a Sherwood broadband going from Wilsonville all the way out and around. It would go down East Bend to, Roy Rogers essentially, and then Roy Rogers into the backside of Sherwood, and then add some connection, down in Wilsonville to complete the loop. So then we would have, a double loop or redundancy in the broadband system. Right now, the only server in this area is Charter. So, this would provide us access into a municipally run broadband fiber optic system if we so desire. It would also add options for our businesses in the King City Plaza, as well as to the town center folks over there, providing them a ready link to broadband services. So, yes.
I just have a question. Did we ever, and I wasn't able to kind of continue with the meetings with, kind of that team with talking about it. So, did we resolve between Courtney Neron's group, who were working on the funding, and the broadband, and Senator Thatcher's group, have they been combined, or is there still kind of two separate groups working on regional, efforts? Do we know?
I'm not 100% sure on that. My understanding was Courtney was working with our group, Wilsonville, Sherwood, ourselves, Tiger Tualatin, I believe, on trying to get that broadband loop extended.
Right.
But I heard that Senator Thatcher had a larger area as well.
Yeah.
She's also working with other groups inside the same.
Right. So I'll circle back with Rep. Neron and just see if her, because I know that it was one of her goals specifically to get her team and Thatcher's team communicating, because it sounded like they were doubling efforts, and they wanted to kind of figure out how to all do pieces of it. So,
Well, along those lines, what happened was, the last meeting we had with, Representative Neron, Senator Thatcher was on that call as well.
oh, okay, good.
And, so they are trying to combine the resources, the dollars that they have, between the two of them. And, their big, concern is in fact infrastructure, meaning broadband. So
Yeah.
they're gonna join forces, the dollars are gonna come, But it's just a matter of figuring out when those dollars are gonna be available. But for us, one of the things that Sherwood has stepped up to do, because of our limited resources in terms of staffing, that they will help us manage whatever dollars come
Mhm.
from Courtney Neron or Thatcher in order to apply it to
Right.
the broadband, process.
Right.
So,
And I recall Courtney saying that they've looked into the legality and all of, and we have figured out all of that procedural side, how it is allowed, they've signed off on it, so we can have kind of the process go through Sherwood municipality,
Yes.
even though the funds are designated for King City.
yes,
For
absolutely.
the-
So,
yeah.
Talk
for
about
that.
that, yeah.
And then I would just say, like, the disbursements, that's one disbursement through Senator Thatcher's office. Then there's the individual disbursement, and that, last I heard, that's supposed to be dispersed in two lump sums
Mhm.
over the course of the next couple of years.
Right.
And it's like, a lump sum, last I heard, was like in September, October, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And then the other one a year later. So, I mean, initially, I think it was supposed to come out in like April, May,
Yeah, well,
and then it got pushed to
July.
June, and then it was July, and then it's August, and now, last I heard it, they were saying October, so.
And see, the difference is, for us being a small state, the size of our state, took that money on a different path. If you were 50,000 or more, then the money came from the treasury directly to your city.
Right.
But our city size, it goes through the state and then to us.
Exactly.
That makes the difference in terms of the flow of that money, okay? And all small cities of our size are subject to the same scenario of that money being filtered through the state and then to us. And I don't know if, say for instance, Beaverton or Hillsborough, and those size cities have already received their money, but there's a possibility that they have.
I'm pretty sure they have, yeah.
So it's a slower process for us, just because we're a small city.
I have two questions. Were there any businesses, that might need some of this money, in King City? We've got restaurants, we've got
Yeah.
the dance, you could not go to a dance class.
Yeah.
So I just want to make a distinction, we did have business funds, business bailout funds through the CARES Act, under the Trump administration, it was the CARES Act.
Okay,
And so during that time, we did do grants to businesses in King City.
okay,
This one is more, it's more to the person. It's
Okay.
a personal allotment so what we had discussed was staying in true or in line with what's in the bill itself. It's for like those employees that had to work throughout the pandemic, right? And so we can put it out and say, hey, grocery line worker or gas station attendant, or anyone that had to deal with the public during that time span and was working in King City, come and apply for your grant. And we can sort through them, we can have a grant council or something to award them, and then we can figure out what kind of allocation we can give them. Maybe it's only, $1,000, maybe it's, 3,000, maybe it's 5, it depends on what we get.
Well,
And what's important is that we know that the CARES funding went directly to the business.
okay, I see, okay.
And what we're really looking to do is to get that money into the hands of the worker,
Right.
because the businesses got it, doesn't necessarily mean the employees really benefited much from it, okay?
Got it.
They may cut the code and paying their, lease and all of those kinds of things to keep the doors open, but there was no direct benefit to many of the employees. And that's really what we want to be able to do, is to make sure that employees who were essential workers, who really kept things going, to have some benefit to this, okay? And the timing is probably gonna be really good, because, the moratorium on rent is expiring, and all of that stuff is gonna start happening. So they're gonna need some additional support, we know that, and this is a way of saying, look, we appreciate you keeping things afloat during this time period, okay?
Yeah. My, my second thought is with the, the do-over with the pandemic that we're experiencing, could we use any of this money to, help our people get vaccinated? A campaign, something, I'm sure there are lots of people who just would not get vaccinated.
We have to take a look at it, I'm not sure, Mike, that's something that we'll have to take a look at, whether or not,
Okay.
There's really only 4 things that we can do.
yeah.
Okay.
That's all.
To be able to do.
And I will say that, I don't know, maybe Counselor Paulson take it after me, but they also said over the phone to us, when we talked about, well, can we dish this out to our businesses? They said, well, there's a business one coming later.
Oh,
So there's another round of business things coming later in our different,
okay.
in different buckets, so, Counselor Paulson.
My question is, how do we make sure that the word gets out to those essential workers that this money is available? Are we gonna go through the businesses, like reach out to Grocery Outlet and ask them to disseminate this information to their workers, or
I think that's what we need to do, that, and, just reach out to our business registry in King City and just say, hey, we have a grant program, if you're interested, you need to go to this website, and I think we have that registry and we can shoot it out.
Okay.
And, I think the key to this is gonna be, were they working through the pandemic, and they proved they were working through the pandemic, and they proved that while working through the pandemic, that they were having contact with the general public, working in contact, and they were at some point of risk, right? Because it's basically like pandemic risk back pay is what it is.
And then, if this money is flowing through us as a city from the state, if the workers are not residents of King City, but they are working at a King City business, are they eligible for the funds from King City? Okay. Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because I'm sure a number of the folks that work at like Grocery Outlet, might live in Tiger and not in King City.
I would say the caveat on that is if you live in King City and then you're working somewhere else, then I think that nuance or that responsibility falls on that other city to pay their own essential workers for keeping their city going, right?
Yeah.
We can design to say, we are trying to thank you and support you for keeping us going. That's really what the focus is on that. Okay?
I just want to clarify one of the eligible uses. So I'm looking at our packet here, and the first use is to respond to the public health emergency or its negative economic impact, including assistance to households, small businesses, and nonprofits, or aid to impacted industries such as tourism and hospitality. Now, having gone through the PPP process and attempting to go through other processes, and knowing a lot about what business owners of all shapes and sizes have gone through, I know that there are business owners in our community who did not receive any funding.
Right.
So I
You're talking
would,
about PRF money.
yeah, they haven't received paycheck protection program or anything like that. And so, even though that's not one of the things you mentioned, Mike, I think it would be good for us to try and develop a method to find those people, and if they somehow can show evidence that they were impacted, then I think that would be important. And just as important is the assistance to households. I wonder about that. Like, I agree we need to make sure people that kept our city going receive some retroactive hazard pay. I wonder about the rest, everybody else, you know?
Well, I understand what you're saying, Dave. And it's such a narrow, band that we can deal with. Assistance, we're talking about infrastructure, okay? You have all these children who have to work from home, and could they afford, could the family afford broadband and the connections that they needed, or even a laptop to do the work? Now, I know schools are saying that, but there are a lot of families who struggle just with that kind of stuff, so that's one piece of it. Does that fit into the, infrastructure piece of what we're talking about there? I don't know. because it's now individual households that we're talking about, rather than trying to, create a better broadband system. But there's that, you
And
know,
it does say in assistance to households, is one of the uses.
so that's a piece that we're gonna have to take a look at, because, you know, I know schools are reopening. Is everybody going to be back in?
Jesus, Kate.
Sorry.
Is everybody gonna be back in the classroom or not? You know, are there still
So
gonna
far,
be
yes.
some families that need to be at home, being schooled? And whether or not we can, provide some assistance there. The other piece of it is that what I talked about earlier, is rent assistance. You know, if that fit into the bucket of helping people, within a household, we're gonna have to really dig into that and figure that out too. So, yeah, one piece of the essential workers, the other piece are households that are suffering for a variety of reasons.
Yep.
And we really, I would love to be able to say yes, but it's just not real clear yet on what, but I think it needs to be on our list.
I agree, and it would also be nice to know what other cities are doing,
Yes.
see if we can
And
share.
I will say from I missed, the last meeting and maybe the last two because of my family situation, but I will say in talking so we kind of had a regional committee with Courtney Naron and some of the other city leaders from within her district to talk about, just this, like so she has a pile of money and how can she equitably share it throughout her district? And what were the parameters that she was gonna use to allocate those funds, the funds that she could allocate herself, right, not necessarily the others. And one of the things that she had to kind of go through, and I don't think any final decision has been made, but she really talked about, instead of direct dollars to households, how could she help assist more people across across the board by, focusing on certain things. So like, she was really interested in projects that couldn't be funded, because of COVID, because dollars got taken away, or, things that fell by the wayside that were really important, but just had to be scrapped. And so it was that kind of mentality. So I don't think anyone's landed on what those parameters are gonna be, but I think it's a good, and maybe we decide, because everyone has had a financial hardship in one way or another, right? But, maybe we kind of look at, okay, where's our cutoff? Is it when if the eviction moratorium comes back, is it people, on the brink of eviction? Is it food, if some, so I think we can kind of sit and play with it, but I think we have to figure out what mechanism are we going to put into place to decide? Is it gonna be as a council, as a committee? Is it gonna be Sherwood? Is Sherwood gonna figure out how to, are we gonna come up with what people can apply for, and then Sherwood is going to evaluate the applications that way? I mean, I think we have to figure out what the protocol is, right?
Well,
I think it's also, I think it's important to also understand what each agency's responsibilities are, right? So Washington County got a huge sum of money to deal with just the,
Right.
just the housing and just the,
Right.
right? So when we talked over the phone with these agencies and things of that nature, like when we brought up, well, we wanna do like more business, because the first thing that we said is like, well, we wanna help out our local
Right.
businesses. And they were like, well, there's another one coming to help out businesses, so you don't need to worry about that. And we're like, oh, okay. Well, then, and then we had to think, we're like, well, what about like getting money in the hands of the employees that works in King City throughout this time period? What about that? They're like, well, that's an option. And then it took us a little while because we didn't really have any broadband or anything really here. And we said as much in our phone call, we're a small city. We don't have need for a lot of broadband or water infrastructure. And it took us, I would say, a couple of weeks to actually formulate ideas that fit within the parameters of what was actually in this disbursement versus what is actually being covered through the larger disbursement.
Yeah.
And so that's why we fell on the water, the purple line extension, because that's something that is needed in the city. and it's something that we can partner with Clean Water Services, Tigers, and others and extend. And that's why we fell on the employee premium pay disbursement, and then, also the broadband with Sherwood and Wilsonville.
And
There's also-
lost revenue too,
So what's that?
lost revenue.
Yeah, and the lost revenue, I mean, and that's only gonna equate to a couple $100,000, like I said.
Because we really didn't get hit that hard as a city in terms of lost revenue. But Mike, you know, it is true that when we're talking about essential workers, we're also talking about the employees here at City Hall. I mean, the police officers and the essential workers that came in here,
Right.
they're included in that essential worker pay that we're talking about. We're not leaving them out.
Yeah, I think CVFNR, like Walton Valley Fire and Rescue, they're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
State of Oregon's doing the same thing, a lot of the other agencies are doing the same thing. We get served with a letter from the union saying, hey, you know, this money is supposed to, you know, pay for these services and things, so we understand that, and I think, we've always, done well in trying to take care of our employees, and I just would carry that forward, and I think the chief and I, we recognize all the valuable time and input that our employees give us in here, and, you know, we continue to put that as a primary or just a high value component to working in a small city. We don't necessarily get paid as much as, you know, you can cross the street and get paid, you know, twice as much as we're making here, but you work here because it's a work-life balance, you know?
Now, point of clarification, and I want everybody to understand that, you know, when we take on these projects and we're talking about managing it and facilitating it with the small staff that we have, it's a very daunting task. When the CRF dollars came, it was actually managed and distributed for us by Washington County. What Sherwood is talking about doing in Wilsonville and so on, to help us with the infrastructure only related to broadband. They're not talking about helping us manage any other piece of this funding.
Oh, okay, that's
So,
yeah.
what we have to do, whatever we decide we're going to do in terms of the funding for essential workers within King City, we also have to understand that we more than likely would have to manage that and facilitate, okay? That's a big job, and like I said, we're gonna have some way of defining who is going to be responsible for doing what. Because the worst thing we can do is to say that this is the program that we're gonna implement and not have it work efficiently, okay? So that's gonna be vitally important, and we need to figure that piece of it out. Right?
Can we do like a executive session or another workshop, or just on that piece where, because I would love to sit down and really, you know, even maybe get staff to sit with us and really think through how some of that processes are gonna work and how to do that. And I also think, to Kate's point, and to your point, is for the money that is available out there, that won't be accessible with this bucket, it is imperative that we have clear, concise, and accurate information to provide people on, okay, if we're not gonna give rent assistance or eviction assistance, this is where you go, and it needs to be accurate. And so I really wanna make sure that, you know, that gets bundled in here so that we're clear where all the dollars can flow. Because I think we're gonna head into another big second wave, and we're, you know, I think we're looking at some hardship coming up in the next year, so.
And let's talk about this for a minute now, because we have to be realistic. We cannot afford to trip over this money. We cannot. And just, I'm thinking about the staff as it is now, and really, we're looking at Mike and Ronnie over there. Sam is going out on maternity leave.
Yeah.
We're gonna be down one. You know, we have a huge number of passports that are being requested right now. There are people coming in trying to come in. This is gonna be another layer. Once we go down this path on this, we have to be successful. We have to make it work. What we're gonna have to do through executive session or whatever we end up doing, we're gonna have to figure out not only what we're going to do, but we're gonna have to figure out how we're gonna do it, how we're gonna staff it, how we're gonna make sure that it is. people are willing to help us, there's no doubt. You know, like I said, Washington County stepped up, Sherwood is willing to step up, but we're not gonna be able to find somebody to do all of this for us. So, the time that we're gonna have to spend trying to figure out not only the how, but we're gonna figure out, once we know what, who is gonna do all of that, okay?
Yeah.
So it looks like, if I'm reading this correctly, we actually have until the end of 2024, is that right?
It's a short window. It's basically, I think we get it dispersed, and then we have like a year to, spend it, and then but I think it's from the end.
It's the end of the year.
But it's not the end of the year of the disbursement itself, right, because it gets two disbursements?
Right.
It's the end of the year from the last disbursement, right?
I don't know, it says.
I thought it was December 31st for the first.
That's what I
Yeah.
thought, but that's when they were gonna dish it out back in April, March or April. I thought then we only had a certain amount of time to dole it out.
Well, we're gonna have to confirm that, because
Yeah, in the committee case, it was like on fire. Like, it was like, we need to decide this absolutely right now. Like, we got contacted on a weekend and said, we need to come up with money
Well, that's why,
that needs in 24 hours. And then that deadline got pushed, and then, but,
and that's how it came out originally.
Yeah,
It was like,
yeah.
you're gonna get this money in March, and you're gonna have it until December 31st to spend it.
suspended, yeah.
And we're just like, whoa, okay. And we're like, what can we do, you know? And we're like, what can we do fast?
right,
What can we get in the ground? What can we build? And we just didn't, initially, we didn't have anything that we were thinking that we had shovel ready that fit in their
In a
description.
parameter, yeah, right.
now,
And
let me
so
say
it-
something, you know, and I don't know the answer to this. I know under the CRF money, the push was, if you don't finish by December 31st, you lose it. I'm thinking that that's not the case, because you don't lose it if you don't spend it within that time frame. There's more flexibility in the time frame to spend this money than we have with the CRF.
There seems to be more
So I'm
flexibility.
looking at page 2, and it says, the funds may be used for any allowed purpose starting on March 3rd, 2021, and must be encumbered by December 31st, 2024. Funds that were encumbered during this period must be spent by December 31st, 2026.
Okay,
Use of funds for projects outside of those dates are prohibited.
okay.
So we
And
have
then
a
you
couple
do give it back if it's not used by 2026.
Okay, so we have until 2026, so there's a larger time frame, a larger window in order to spend it. But we also are gonna have to demonstrate what we spent on and all of that.
Yeah.
Record keeping and making sure that there's documentation on what's being spent
Yeah.
is a part of this whole process. So we're gonna have to dig in and really try to lock down, the how, the what, and all of those things, before we get any funding. Nothing has shown up in our bank account yet, right? You sure about that? I wanna open the account and say we have $900,000 that you didn't know yet.
I also, let's also put on the record, we are not, as counselors, getting any of this stuff. Is that correct?
That's correct.
We can't pay ourselves, no. Yeah.
Damn.
No subsidy.
I think,
Unfortunately.
while it doesn't feel that we have some time on this, I think we also have to take into account the fact that there are people that, the reason why this is being dispersed in the first place, there are people who are hurting.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, we can't wait, we can't wait this, yeah, if this is hazard pay for last year, they're already way past, you know.
Every time you went to the grocery store and the poor checkers out there,
Yeah.
Well, and now, and I will say now, we also have, I really, there's been a lot of discussion about the new ownership of grocery outlets and whether they've kept the former employees or not, and I don't know what's true or not. So but I do think that is important that we figure out a way that we somehow can get through to the former employees, that if they are no longer working at grocery outlet, that they are included within this pocket, because wow, you know, those employees and the ones at Safeway endured a lot, and they did not have a lot of turnover. I mean, I think that's unfortunately, there are just gonna be a lot of people that fall through the cracks because, you know, maybe they worked for a couple months and then they went on and they're just maybe never gonna find out about this. But I think we need to make a real effort to ensure the former employees of Grocery Outlet are
Healthcare
no.
workers at Pacific Point and.
Yeah, yep.
Like,
I have a little bit of information.
The King Village,
My
a whole bunch of people
understanding
there.
is the former owner of the King City Grocery Outlet is now, purchased the one in Molalla, and a number of the employees went to Molalla. So
Okay.
it's probably the most direct route
Yeah.
is to inform the former owner.
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
And I'm friends with them.
outlet
Yep.
to dispense, to let him be the vehicle
Yeah.
for.
I think that's a great idea, and I can reach out to them, because I'm friends, so I can, you know, once we get, I'll make sure that we loop them into this, so that they can, you know.
There's one other aspect of, families in need. And there's supposed to be dollars that were gonna be coming per child up to the age of 17 or whatever it is, maybe. And those dollars are supposed to be per child once a month. Has that started happening?
It has,
I've heard people receiving,
it has.
Okay. Oh, you guys have children, you didn't?
I mean,
Yeah.
We have to defer our taxes, so I haven't.
yeah.
Oh, I don't know yet.
I'm not personally.
I hope so.
Maybe someday.
So that, does
But
that?
it's happening.
Yeah, it's working, either you get a check or you get a.
Or you
If you had a direct deposit for already on file, then they would just deposit directly.
Okay, and that's a monthly payment or,
Yeah,
or how long?
Oh, gosh.
It's for a year, is that right?
think
Isn't
so,
it
but it's-
300 per child a month?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's for a year, right?
But, or there's slight variation based upon your taxes, but yeah.
Kids grow up.
The reason I ask that question is that is what benefits to some of the families that are living right now. So I lost track of whether or not that actually started. So to wind this conversation down, we're gonna have another session to really dig into this, to try to figure out how would we do this? How would we orchestrate those things? We know kind of what you need to do on the purple line, we know what we're doing on the infrastructure and the broadband, with Sherwood. So the items that we really have to lock down is the opinion pay for essential workers, and how would we distribute that, and whether or not, we can, find these dollars to specifically help, families in need in some way. Those are the things. Are there any other things that we really need to, figure out?
Well, how will the lost revenue fees work? Will that just be something that you work up and then, like as a proposal, like this is,
Yeah, well, Mira and I have already done a calculation on our books on how much of a loss we took over the course of last year. And like I said, it came out to around $200,000.
okay.
So we know that, you know, that portion for that, making the city whole probably comes off the top, and then we take the rest.
What was the approximate price tag for the purple line and its,
My guess is about 500,000, if not more. I'm trying to get some numbers out of Clean Water Services for that.
Okay.
So, I mean, it dwindles pretty fast,
yeah?
so. And we didn't get a very large sum, being a small city, we get fairly small, but, like, you know, the thing to remember is that although our sum gets chunked down pretty quick, like, there's a larger umbrella
Right.
that's serving a lot of the needs that you mentioned,
Right.
and a lot of the needs that you mentioned for businesses and things that are coming down as well.
Right.
So, when, in our conversations initially, we had thought, we said the same thing. We said, well, what about this? And then, oh, there's another pot for that, or, oh, there's another pot for that. So, like, our list that we initially started with, that we were going to go out and
Do all the.
do all these great things, got dwindled to just a few, where we were just like, huh, okay. But
I
at that
advocated
point,
really hard to get us a new track at the park.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Because
We tried.
we have not been able to use any funds down there, and there's cracks, and I do think we need to,
We're gonna-
all that,
We're
but.
gonna find it.
Tried.
I got two clues.
I'm sure there's a part of the grant.
There's lots of grants and
We'll
things,
get
we'll
that.
get there, yeah.
We'll get there. It's, you know, we have so many things that we need to figure out. So, I think we're on a fairly short time frame on this. And I know everybody's busy, we're coming out of the summer pretty quickly, and we're gonna have to find a date where we can meet next, specifically on the funding issue, okay? So,
Are we doing that now? Do it.
let's do it. We can pick a date. Anybody have a?
I have a suggestion.
Yeah, why don't we,
Please do not change the time.
yeah.
We can't change times anymore, you guys, oh my God.
Once we decide what time.
I was the only one who decided to change the time.
I wasn't going to change the time.
Don't do it.
Let me work on it, okay, and then we'll see, how about we talk to our attorney and get our attorney to find a time and stuff, and we'll do like a doodle poll. And send it out that way. I think that's probably the most efficient way to do it, instead of all of us trying to break out our calendars and find.
Okay, all right, let's do a doodle poll, but I want everybody to understand that this is very important, so we need to get rolling on it, okay?
And if I can, just for a second, one of the major things is the employees here, the 10 of us, need to be a major part of this conversation.
Yeah.
For this past year, that, year and a half that things have been going on. And so I'm kind of hearing us losing focus away from that. And I'm here to represent them and the job that everybody did in this building.
Ernie, why don't you tell everyone the amount of overtime that the police officers?
I mean, I couldn't even tell you hundreds of hours
Hundreds and hundreds of hours of overtime.
that, have been going on and stuff like that. And the amount of time that people went without supplies that I couldn't get, and I had to beg and scratch for everything for months to try to get this mask and stuff. So it's something it's near and dear to me that we need to take care of staff.
100%.
And it's something that, I just.
Well, I apologize, Ernie, if it kind of sounded like me wanting that.
Well, and it's something that,
No,
you're gonna watch my hackles get up, that's gonna be one, because the crew here, the people that came here every day,
understood.
are kind of one of the targets, and I appreciate that.
100%,
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to speak my little bit there that,
Absolutely.
I appreciate it, and I know they do too.
everybody here, is, everybody here is their own department.
Yeah,
Right?
100%, yeah.
I mean, everybody's got their own little deal, and then, trying to keep track and get everybody, I'm rambling, but it's just something that, I just wanna make sure that we focus on that.
I hope,
Well, and
I hope your employees appreciate your passion for them, because really, that's what you're saying, they're important to you, and we all have to understand how important they are to all of us in this entire community, and that's what you're speaking to.
Because I'm telling you, I don't even like answering the phone anymore, because there's nothing but bad news on the other end.
Right.
And stuff, so it's, it's something that, I just wanna make sure we don't forget
I'm
that.
gonna call you and just to tell you a joke.
You might have to leave it in the voicemail.
Yeah, right. No, but I think it's also really important, Ernie, that everyone really understands that, especially the police department, because there was a point where the city staff worked from home, but the police department and our officers and you and Brian had, still came every day, and then you guys functioned much more than a police force. You guys grabbed groceries and medications, and you picked, there were accidents, you served as paramedics, and there were so much more that you guys did. You kept people who were losing their sanity company, and so I think it's really important that people understand, we're not just talking about, oh, you have to work hard, right? It's not that. It's the fact that everyone went so above and beyond what was needed, and no one complained about that. And at the time, no one complained about it, and then everyone's burned out now, but, right, so absolutely, we will not lose
I'm
focus
gonna
on
say
you.
it right here, right now, that the first priority is to take care of this staff, okay? That's the first priority, and that has to be understood, okay? The rest of it comes after that, okay? Number one priority. I said it, okay? And that's what I mean, okay? I don't think anybody disagrees with that, okay?
We just get excited when you talk about trucks, Ernie. I love my car.
Okay, so we're gonna do a Google poll to try to get a date, when we can really dig into this, okay? All right. Any other questions or concerns about the American Rescue Plan Act funding? Okay, let's move on to number 3, another one of our favorite topics, gas tax.
Ooh.
Good old gas tax. So, we did have a survey go out, we got some responses, Ronnie went through and tried to synthesize the data and put it into, some nice little charts and tables for us to be able to kind of correlate that data and understand what they're basically saying. Ronnie, you want to take it, or you want?
I'll take it. So, I was gonna show you the beautiful graph on the screen, but, you know.
Thank you.
I keep breaking things. So, just pass this one along here. That kind of goes through some of the actual graphs in there. That's, so the main point of the survey was to figure out where people,
This is a great graphic.
where to, how they felt on the gas tax and get their feedback. The survey, in my opinion, was a success in that. We received over 431 surveys.
Sorry, does everybody have this? 'Cause
No, which one?
Ronnie said pass it along.
Yeah, pass that one along.
Isn't that in here though?
No, not all.
That's a different one?
Yeah, that's the graphs.
Oh, got it, okay.
Okay.
Okay, I'm with you, okay.
Okay,
Sorry.
No,
The total number was 437?
431, survey responses.
Uh-huh.
Of those surveys, 344 were mailed in and staff entered into the survey, system, and 87 of those were actually filled out by people online at home.
Okay.
However, 48 of them were missing information, so I couldn't really put them into the system. So the grand total of surveys, reported was 383. So that's still about, don't quote me on this number, it's about 4% of the population.
Now, I'm looking at the first page, well, it's not the first page, it's like the one with the, graph that shows KCCA
Yes.
in the top,
So that, if you go to, that's the feedback
no, that's
summary.
page 4. Let's talk about page 4 one.
So page 4, when we were, working on this survey, we were trying to figure out the best way to get people involved.
Right,
The main thing was online survey and mailing out the survey.
right.
Well, KCCA won in that regard.
Now, let's talk about that for a minute.
So, yeah,
Now, so of those responses, 158 are from KCCA.
yes.
Which also has the oldest roads, with the most concern about the quality of those roads and the maintenance on those roads. Is that a correlation to the eight or?
So I haven't gone that far yet. This
Oh,
is just preliminary. But what I can do, on the 18th, I plan on having a little bit more information. So, I don't know, that would be one of the things I look at, to see if there's a correlation between those two. Edgewater was 52, Highlands was 30, Garden Villas was 22, and then, yeah. So if you go down to the second question, it says, do you believe that maintaining the streets and fixing the potholes should be a community priority? 81% said yes, and 18% said no.
Okay.
If we could just interject, just
Yeah,
kind
go
of
for it.
speed it up a little bit. So basically, the overall, the survey says that the majority of residents aren't in favor of the registration fee. That they'd rather do.
Auto registration fee.
Yeah, so they'd rather do the gas tax if we were gonna do one. The higher, approval rate was for a 3-cent gas tax instead of the higher 5 or 7 or none. I think the approval rate was right around 66%. So, but that's based on those that responded to the survey, right? So typically what we figure is there's anywhere from a 10 to 15 point gap between polls and what you see at the ballot box. So overall, when we look at this with a 66% approval rating, you take, 10 to 14 points off of that, and you have a narrow margin for pass,
Okay,
if you review.
that's what we're learning at this point.
That's basically the outcome of this survey and the people that have indicated their response.
Okay.
Now, as we know, polls don't always tell the whole story, so.
And so, based on what we've seen so far, what is our feeling about moving forward? We know that if we compare what we did in 2016 to today, we know that we can do a much better job in the way we write the ballot measure, okay? We talked about that, and it's going to be important to really simplify it to the point where people really understand what it is we're talking about.
So,
Go ahead.
so I think we're moving forward to answer your first question, Mayor. Is first, we need to put together, some educational, pieces, so people actually understand the purpose of the gas tax and what it will serve. Because there were a number of questions asked in the comments throughout this that I think that we can address, right? So I think through just, a series of public disbursements and announcements and just getting some information out there so people can make an informed decision, that we can try to at least get people so that they can understand what we're trying to accomplish and make an informed decision. I don't think there's any way that we can do this and get it prepared for the November ballot. We all know that. But it's a good chance that by next May or so, that we can get the things accomplished that we want to accomplish. Now, of course, we're still in pandemic mode, and it's not looking bright on the other side of the tunnel here. But it's something that we could monitor and prepare and at least, consider when the time comes in a few more months.
Now, is there any plan, and how do we get the feedback in terms of the results of the survey to the general public? Or do we? Is that the next step with this? What is the next step, you think, in terms of the survey?
Well, I think that's something that we maybe need to talk with our committee, the gas tax committee that was formed,
Right.
and talk amongst, that group, because there's some knowledge in that group that's not represented here that, could maybe lend some input and forward thinking on that from past experiences, and then maybe answer that question.
Okay, and since we're seeing these results for the first time, Kate, Micah, you guys are on the committee, what are your thoughts on our next step?
Well, I definitely think that November is not happening. Yeah, that's for sure. And I'm almost thinking maybe, take a look next November, not in May, but maybe next November. We'll also have higher voter turnout probably in November as well. So I would say that would give us some time to work on this. Some of the comments here, are super confusing, but, that tells me, about closing the pool and saving money, and
So-
also.
That's an internal KCCA issue.
Right. Hang on, and also, HOA fees are going up, so I don't wanna pay, and then so many themes that show that people don't know where we begin and end.
What's the difference between HOA versus city?
Right,
Yeah.
so that, aside from gas tax, is, something that we need to be working on. I mean, we started, I know, but, well.
I think in general, with a lot of the initiatives that we're trying to do as a city, there's a combination of a lack of understanding from a lot of people within the city and a lot of misinformation that's mixed in with there as well. And I think that it is important that I think it's more important to get the message out and get accurate information to people than it is to try and push this for a specific date. And that's what I think Kate's probably right, that it might actually it might actually be more beneficial to go for next November rather than next May.
Right.
If it allows for a full year of being able to talk to the public, to be able to talk about this in city council meetings or as part of any town halls or anything like that, just to make sure that, we have enough time to really address all of this information and make sure that more people understand it.
And the other thing I have heard a few times is, what does a backlog mean? And that was a really good question, actually, because they're like, if there's a schedule, what does a backlog mean? And so communicating that, yes, that's the schedule, but we'd like to add more. And by the time we get to what's on the schedule 3 years from now, we might only be able to do 2 or 3 projects because of the cost. So just kind of explaining that, and all of our stuff is public. Our budget is public, our meetings are public, and I'm fine with learning more about how we allocate road funds and helping our citizens understand that too. It's not a secret, and so I want people to just be comfortable with that. And I think, we can't do that by May, friends.
No. Well, and I will say this, that I have some, we heard from one of our gas stations that they're still recovering, and we're about to go, I think, in my opinion, into another real significant period of COVID. I'll be real honest, I don't think that we should even approach this, even though I think we need funding for our roads, and it's a priority, but I don't think we should even approach it or try to educate or do anything until we get through the master plan, because the messaging is going to be distorted, and it will just come out as, we are trying to get a gas tax on the bill, on the plate, so that we can fund our roads that we're building, right? And I don't think that, I think our city has been panicked enough, and I think we need to just keep our focus on getting to the master plan. Then once that is done, then I think we really need to we take away some of the lessons that we've learned in the messaging and the issues with the messaging that we've had for the master plan, and we apply those to how can we accurately educate the community on how our infrastructure is funded and fixed and repaired and all of that. And I think we need to stick with that. I don't think we've done a good job with our messaging yet, and I would like to, I guess there's always room for improvement, I guess is what I mean. And so I would like to take those lessons, apply it to the gas tax education, and put it. So personally for me, I think we should say, hey, yeah, I think November is a great projection, but I don't want to put down a time frame, because I think our true focus needs to be the master plan, and then we turn to the gas tax. And so that's my 2 cents.
And that makes a lot of sense. What we want to do, I think what we keep learning in everything that we're doing is that there's an education that has to take place every time we take on any project that the city needs, the residents need to be involved in. And there's so many things that people just don't understand about how city government works. And I think it's our obligation to make sure that people do understand what we do, why we're doing it, and what the process is. And we have to keep driving back to the process, because people like to believe that we just sit here and we come up with all these ideas that are only beneficial to us. And when it's absolutely not true. Every decision we make, it is designed based on needs of the city, whether it be immediate or in the future. And we don't sit here and make decisions in order to disrupt and to try to make life miserable for anyone. It wouldn't make any sense to do that. But I think it's incumbent upon us to figure out how to communicate what we're doing. And we gotta find a way to educate people, to find that sweet spot that says, this is what it is, this is why we're doing it, and this is how important it is either to today or in the future. We gotta do that, we gotta keep fighting that in order to help people to better understand where we come from.
See,
But that also means that when people wanna know more, they have got to come to us. Somehow we gotta get them to come to us. And it's not what your next door neighbor says, who hasn't been to a council meeting, or hasn't been to a planning commission meeting. It is us. And they have to start with us and give us an opportunity to explain what and why we're doing what we're doing.
I had, last night, and we can probably talk about this later on the agenda, but I had a really wonderful, informative exchange last night, and I will talk about it later, but what I took away from it, and I will only speak for me personally, okay, is that, because we all know there is a significant misunderstanding. Where do we start and the HOA stop? Where does the state start and we stop, right?
Yeah.
And there's just a lot of misunderstanding and it's boring. A lot of this stuff is boring for people. Not a lot of people want to know the ins and outs of infrastructure funding, But what I learned last night in this exchange with someone who previously we've had very heated social media exchanges was that somewhere for me, my attempts to educate can be coming across as patronizing. And how do you tell someone, or how do you reach someone who doesn't understand what we're talking about? We know it, and help them, how do we say, you don't know what you're talking about, but we want to educate you and do it in a way that we're not patronizing, we're not, So I think we do have a misunderstanding of a lot of what we do, and they do need to come to us, and I will always continue to help with that. But I also think we need to shift our paradigm a little bit in, maybe we design a fun night that has something interesting, but is also informative, or something to help educate people what this whole is, How can we make it sexy to come learn about road funding, right? And, maybe we do, I don't know, but I think we. I am committed to making a fun, I gotta be careful, but I think, while I completely agree, and I absolutely stand by everything I've ever said, but I do think, I think we have to be careful. I have to personally be careful on how to reach people when I know they don't understand, but just not be smug and patronizing. And I will work on that.
May I say it this way?
Yes.
The education of what we're doing and why we're doing it is not going to happen through social media.
Agreed.
It is not. And we all have to understand that. Every resident in this community needs to understand that going back and forth, arguing on social media about what you think is going on versus what it really is going on can only happen through conversation. It's got to be, this is the topic that we need to talk about in depth right now. Do you understand it more than you did before you started the conversation or not? And what is it you don't understand? And who has the ability to explain it so you do understand it?
And none of that works on social media.
Exactly.
No, it doesn't.
And it won't.
100%.
I saw this evolving in my final years as a manager in Young. Issues come up, union issues, and people sending back and forth emails and these kinds of things. And people don't even understand what the email was saying, but they thought they resolved an issue. When in reality, you needed to have a conversation with someone. You need to talk. You need to look people in the eye and say, well, I don't understand that. You can't do that on social media.
But I think the problem, Ken, is that what we have is, in my opinion, we have a distorted view that has been put out on social media. We have a large population of people who think we are currently about to build Fisher Road.
Mm-hmm.
all because of, right, social media and other efforts.
Yeah.
And so the problem is we can't stay silent. I mean, one of the reasons I decided to spend an exhaustive amount of time for the last week responding to every single post I could respond to,
I read on my phone.
right, is because if I keep quiet,
Yeah.
then it's going to continue this perception that we're building a road right now,
Mhm.
and the panic that is starting to bubble up, it just keeps getting perpetuated. So I agree with you, and that's why, right, it was like, okay, we need to cool this down, and we need to invite people to come be with us at the park and do all that. But, and so I agree, but I think we have to do both, because when something's getting steamrolled out on social media, we have to respond, right?
Okay, so now we have to try to figure out how to pull it back.
Yep,
And
absolutely,
you guys
100%.
have heard me, and I've said it time and time again. We gotta drive people to the process. And we have to have people speaking to the process who know what they're talking about. We need to be on the same page in terms of what it is we're doing, why we're doing it. And then we say, well, that doesn't make any sense to me. Why would you do that? And we have to be able to say why. You know, if this is the best option, or this isn't the best option, or these are the other options that we're looking at on gas tax and everything else we do. And if we don't get to that point where we can get people talking, I don't know how you can get to a point where there's a level of understanding that says there's benefit in what we're talking about doing. Yes, we realize it's not perfect, and yes, there are a lot of things that we don't have answers to because the process hasn't gotten there yet, right? And if the process hasn't gotten there yet, when will the process get to the point where you can answer the questions that's most concerning to you?
I think that we also need to take people on the journey with us and not necessarily expect them to hop on the bus. So,
And we invite people.
I know that, but, and I think that because of social media, like, we now know that maybe we could have done something different, or maybe we could have, it's like it's changing, right? The past years, if you wanna know what's going on in the city, like, I've always known, you go to the city website, you go to a city council meeting, you do your research, it's all public information, it's all there.
Right.
But I think there are a lot of people who still don't know that. And so, like, we talk about this, right? And this is gonna be public somewhere, and I don't know if we have an obligation to redact the profanity, but, no, maybe we don't, okay. So, but this doesn't tell the story.
No,
So, we need to tell the story.
this is gathering information.
Right, and so, I mean, I lived in King City for 10 years. When do you think the first time I looked at master plan documents? Like 2 years ago.
Right.
Right. And so, I'm a nerd like that. I like to look at documents and read through them and everything, but, I would also, if I were the type of person who did not want to do that, I would ask my neighbor. Or ask somebody, you know, that I thought, so we need to somehow be more accessible, like the event you're having.
Yeah. And that's what this event is designed to do, to open up conversation.
Yeah.
And there's concern that we're putting ourselves in a position where there will be even more confusion, to people. But what I think we have to do with the event that we're talking about is say, listen, people, we're gonna have an opportunity to hear answers to your concerns. And this is how we think we can present that to you. We don't have all that answers yet. There's some things that are being said that aren't accurate. But we can clarify those things if we have an opportunity, if and when we have an opportunity to have a conversation, specifically to your concerns, specifically to the thing that's been published, and why it's either true or not true, so that you understand that. That's what we hope we can accomplish by having a town hall on Fisher, regarding Fisher Road. we may end up having to do exactly the same thing on gas tax at some point.
Right.
Every time we have one of these high passion concerns, we have to be front and center. We have to be right there where people can ask us a question point blank. And we have to have answers. That is what we're obligated to do. It's not smoking mirrors, it's not BS. That's what we don't do, okay? But we've got to have the answers. And it may not be an answer that people want to hear, but it's going to be the truth, right? We gotta force that hand. And I don't think that's the wrong thing to do. I think it's the best thing to do.
See, like, my takeaway is, okay, for the gas tax, we need to have 4 town halls before we even, you know, and we have to have the schedule of town halls ready to go when we send out our flyer saying, hey, this is how road infrastructure works.
Yeah.
Come learn at these town halls. And we need to have, right, and that's what that's our big, for me, that's my big takeaway. I agree with social media, listen, I will always stand up on social media against the bullies, right? Not a problem. However, I agree with you. Where we're really going to reach our community is at the event. And so far, right, now, we have people right, there's a lot of reasons why there's not a lot of people here. But we know, time and time again, no one comes to our meetings.
Right.
And we have to figure out a way to get people here. And so, you know, that, my vision for the next 6 months is gonna figure out how to make it, how to get people here.
This might be a little bit of a cynical point of view, but maybe the response is, all responses on social media should be strictly, come to a meeting and discuss this with us. No other answers.
Or email.
Because, or contact me directly. But no more social media, because that's where it spirals out of control. So maybe it just is, we encourage you to come to a meeting and discuss this, or for you to reach out to me privately. But rather than on that wall.
That's what I do. When I get an email, whether it's forwarded to me or not, when I get an email, I'm gonna always offer a phone call to talk about.
Of course, as we talked about before, how many
That's,
calls have we gotten?
and I just call back. So, but let's do this. They're more than just town halls. I think we need to really step it up and start going to more HOA meetings, you know, to talk about these very things. Once we feel comfortable that we have answers to what we know the questions are, we need to venture out. We need to get out. We can't, I don't expect everybody to come to us. I suspect that there are a lot of people who don't attend HOA meetings either. But at least we can say that we visited this meeting to provide information, to have a conversation. And how many HOAs do we have in this city? Ronnie, Mike?
17, 18 in the Platte County.
17 or 18
Yeah.
HOAs.
But I will say, Smart and I, and Micah and Annie are at every single Edgewater, I've been to every single Edgewater HOA meeting, except for the last couple of months, but, so, I 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
I think the problem is that, and I will be very candid, the people who are yelling on social media don't come to any of those meetings. That's not, you know, so I think I don't necessarily know what the answer is. I don't think removing us completely from social media is the right answer.
Yeah,
But I think a discussion about, I think it is a discussion, right?
I'm not saying removing us from
Right.
social media, that's not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the response just needs to be to encourage them to come to those meetings. Because the argument on social media is completely pointless. And you're not gonna change anybody's mind through social media.
I don't think that I'm gonna.
And the vocal people that are on social media are making their point on social media because they are not willing to actually have a conversation, so their point of view isn't gonna change. That's my theory on it.
Yeah, we have,
I'm just saying, we're so far off topic.
yeah, sorry.
You know, we got gas tax on the agenda, and 116th, we got our engineers here to talk to us about.
Sorry.
You see how we are?
Oh, my goodness, that's not a fun topic, okay, all right, pause.
Can I close the gas tax out?
Yeah.
Okay, gas tax is going to be closed out. We say that we will have another meeting with the team, and we're gonna highlight, what we learned from this, and then we will talk about what our next move is gonna be, and it probably won't be until sometime next year or so. Okay, so that's what we're gonna do. Now, and I appreciate it, but this conversation is important, and we're gonna have to figure out how to do a better job of communicating with people and having people communicate with us. That's what we're talking about. So, thank you guys for coming, and sorry about, how we got off.
It's my fault, I think it's more
But
fun.
now, we're gonna talk about, the improvements to 116th Avenue. Mike, take us through it.
Okay, so, we walked the site today. We believe that there's enough space there to add about 4 parking spots. Maybe three, right, Full John's what we estimate. And that will take us almost to the 150-foot mark. And then, at that point in time, the turn lanes come back into normal, so you could probably keep the last 2 spots right there at the corner of King George. But I'm gonna give it over to Zach. I think you did a lot on this, and Full John, who might be able to speak to the road design a little bit more. The safety aspects, we know what the safety aspects are. Essentially, if somebody turns right or left off of Beach Bend onto 116th, they almost hit the parked cars that are there, or the people that are trying to get in and out of the car. So, the removal of the parking along that stretch for 150 feet is to allow a clear travel lane and remove that safety hazard, okay? That's what that's for. The other element is it adds a straight and a left turn lane in the center, and a right turn only on the far eastbound side of 116.
Turn lane only, turn right.
To turn right, right turn only on the east, all right? That being said, Zach, Full John,
Yeah, so, I mean, we weren't initially planning on doing a kind of a fold out to include parking. That kind of was brought to our attention later by Mike and Ronnie. And so, sorry we missed the slide walkthrough. I thought it was at 6, so no mistake there.
No, that wasn't your fault, that was my fault.
Okay. Yeah, so, sounds like, I mean, there are a couple issues with the pullout, there. One would be right-of-way acquisition, and the other is, we would be changing, I guess it would depend on how far we go, but it would be changing pervious area into impervious, which can, trigger some, stormwater, issues where we either have to look into, adding piping and, catch basins, or getting a credit through, I believe, Clean Water Services. I believe it's 1,000 square feet, of new impervious area. That could be an issue that we need to look into.
What is impervious area?
The pervious area is just where the water will go through the soil and just drain into the groundwater, where impervious is, it doesn't drain, so like concrete, asphalt, it'll drain into those flow to wherever either pool somewhere or go into a collection system somewhere. And so adding impervious area means that the water has to go somewhere, and so a lot of times it goes into a catch basin somewhere, and so we have to make sure that there's capacity or that it's draining to somewhere that will actually drain and not just pool. And
So do we have stormwater, where's the nearest stormwater drain from that location?
I believe it's not until past the extent of our project, close to royalty. And so, yeah, so the second, I know we talked about the second phase would be the second portion of 116th, including some stormwater improvements. So we have not gotten to that point. So this addition can cause.
And what?
Or the addition of this, kind of pullout can kind of trigger some things that may be an issue and, may not be able to be done with this construction,
Right,
because it is pretty, I mean, construction's already been awarded, and
exactly.
I mean, we can look into it for sure, and,
Can I back up for a second?
yeah.
How many parking spots with the current plan are being removed again?
Six, maybe?
Well, so the current plan is to take all of them out on the west side of 116th, right? With none remaining? I thought you said maybe two.
We're gonna identify two for handicap, right? And we have two that we're gonna.
Would those still be on 116th, like closer to King George? Is that the idea?
So those are beyond that.
What we just looked at
Right. that's
when we were over there talking is like, what was the extent of those things? And where you could potentially retain some spots. And so we felt, I think when we were looking at it, that there might be room there just north of King George to retain one, if not two spots.
Okay, so we're looking at enough here. And right
Two
now,
spots,
so
yeah.
does that mean right now there is room for like 8 cars? Because you said if we take 6 cars out.
No, it's basically, including those spots, you've got about 6 cars.
So really,
So taking out 4 cars.
If we remove everything and then add the 3, I think they're only losing 2 spots total.
Okay, but if we can't add new spots, how many spots are we gonna lose? Is it 4 or 6?
It'd be 4,
Okay.
right?
There's 6 total, right?
Yeah, we believe there's about 6 total.
6 total, we're hoping to save 2,
Right.
so we would lose 4.
4, and then.
We're trying to see if we can add 2, so we would only lose.
Right, so there's
No.
6 to 7 total that could fit in there,
Right.
right? So the idea is we would be able to save 2 at the end, and then we would add 3 if we can get the right of way and deal with the impervious surfaces and all that jazz, stormwater. That would give us 5 on that whole stretch. So max we lose 2, more likely we just lose 1, maybe 2.
If we get the additional.
When is,
Right,
when
if that is there. What's that?
when's the work supposed to, when are we actually breaking ground?
For summer projects?
For this project specifically, when, do we have a projected start date?
It was just awarded, so it'll probably be in a month, we might get, there's agreed to yet.
There's really no way that we can get this wrapped up into this project, but like we can address the immediate safety concerns now and then have a temporary setback while we plan to put the additional parking in there and come in and do the parking.
Can we designate the remaining spots as handicap now?
Yeah.
Can we
Yeah, I think
do
so.
that?
I don't know why we couldn't.
Okay.
But I think it's also smart to, if we can get the property designated, you know, we can get it over, it depends on how fast we can move and when they get us on their schedule. So there's a chance
And if
that we can
afford
move
it-
fast enough that we can get this thing done. A chance, slim,
Right.
but there's a chance. And so, I mean, I think it's worth a shot and going for it.
Well, and I would also wanna know what's the fiscal impact if we can't get it in time and have to come back to it, how much is that gonna cost us versus trying to get it in now? I mean, I would think it would be cheaper if we could run for it and see if we can do it,
Roll it in.
roll it in now, no?
It might be cheaper just going out to bid, because then they're gonna have to come back and bid it correctly, right? And we're only doing the corners, right now?
Yeah, we're doing.
88?
So, oh, is that all we're doing right now?
We're not doing it,
Where
right?
the pullout is, we're not touching any of the sidewalk currently, so it'd be completely new there.
Right.
Oh, you guys are talking about the ADA sidewalk is about to go, that's about to
That's
be,
just
that's breaking.
George
When is the turn lane actually being put in?
now,
Oh, okay.
like this summer. But, I mean, we can come back in, because we're not, everything that we're talking about, the cutout and adding a couple parking spots there to mitigate the loss of parking is all new. We're not touching any of that as part of this plan.
Oh,
Right.
got it.
But we can go in there, we can probably just do a bid, it's probably cheaper actually, to do a bid rather than come in and do a change order with the
Yeah,
turn one.
okay.
Then they'll be like, oh, change order?
Yeah, sure,
So,
yeah.
I guess, yes, we should get a bid, but my bigger question is still, do we we need this more than we need some of our other road projects done, or, you know.
It is a safety concern.
No, I'm talking about the parking.
Oh, the parking.
Yeah, no,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
is for sure.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like, that's for
Yeah.
sure that needs to be done. I've driven it, and
Well-
I've almost run into a car,
Yeah.
just because you can't see
Yeah.
when you're turning left.
And that's an honest, I had a conversation with a woman who lived there.
Yeah.
And she said, the most important thing to me is to get this turn lane in, and for me to not be, in a situation where I'm parked, where my door is gonna be torn off when I'm opening my door. And she said, if we can somehow get, 2 or 3 parking spaces, that's the most important thing, because her biggest concern is safety concern
Yeah.
of being open your door and getting your door. So, I say, what we really need to do is to move forward with this project, but at the same time, we need to be working with the owner of that, land, and to see if, we can get, move forward at some point, to do the, bulb out and, you know, to fix that once and for all. It would be a great benefit, to the owner and the, resident.
I just want to, I think, to your question, Councilor Moore, is it necessary? Parking in the suburbs, is that necessary?
Well,
Probably not.
And I really don't know.
Yeah. Perception.
I don't drive that street often. Today, when I drove through around 4 o'clock, granted, lots of people are probably at work, but there were so many parking spots, like, so many. And then I know that the residents also said that often people who live across East Bend will park in the neighborhood, and,
That is true, and Commissioner Tyso could probably comment to this, because what we do see is the parking not only from the King City Apartments, but also from across the street and other areas that will line the road, along 116th and down King George. And so we know that the parking there gets stacked up all the way, and people do end up, having to walk greater distances to get to their, domiciles or place of residence, right? So we do know that there is, that parking's at a premium at this particular location. I think the gesture would be to mitigate some of the impact for the removal of the parking.
right.
Granted, it's not necessarily the city's responsibility to make sure that the apartment complex provides enough parking for their residents, but it would be a nice gesture.
That was my next question. Does every apartment have a parking spot? I don't remember, I think someone,
They mentioned that they had to pay for
They had to pay
They have to
for
pay.
it.
They have to pay for it.
do they have to pay for an extra spot, or they have to pay for one at all?
They have to pay for
One and all.
their covered one, I thought, the one that's designated.
But it sounds like they don't have many that are not covered as well. Like, it's not an option that there's a free spot or a paid spot. It's covered.
Okay.
It's still limited. But again, it's the question of whether or not that's the city's responsibility. And I agree with you,
I think it would be
it is a
a
good gesture,
nice gesture, for sure.
especially because parking has been a contentious topic within the city.
All disputes in King City will somehow come back to parking in some way, shape, or form.
Exactly.
Either a perception issue or, I mean, it's a very hot topic.
Well, we're willing to help.
Yeah,
We
it was,
understand the concern. But, what rises to the top, one is convenient, the other is safety. And the convenience part of it, yes, we want to help resolve that if we can. But the first order of business is safety, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. We've got to go down that path first, and then, the convenience part of it, we will try also to orchestrate something that will work better for that resident, if we can get, an agreement with, the owner.
Right, well, I mean, that's the biggest thing, is if the owner says no, then there we go. I mean, that, you know, for them, it would do them good to hand over, and work with us, that little strip, because, you know.
but if the owner says yes, then city basically, and the residents of the city are on the hook for the construction of a couple extra parking spots application. So I just want to make sure the council's well aware of what the options are there.
Well, you know that we're gonna have to
Well, I mean,
get some process myths on
Right.
what that is
Yeah.
gonna take anyway.
Yeah.
I'm not willing to do $100,000 parking
Yeah.
case,
Right.
right? I mean, that's just,
But we
Yeah.
need that, and I think it would be worth our while to try to get an estimate on what that, bulb out with, process would be decided.
Right, and I mean, I put the bulb out and the additional parking along with like the wall, the wall along Fisher. It's one of those special projects that doesn't really, it doesn't improve the road surfaces, it doesn't, but it does improve the livability for the residents of King
That's
City,
what,
right?
yeah,
So-
that's what we do, sure. Okay, basically, we can't make any decisions today, because that's not what this is for. But, now we have a better understanding. Are there any other questions surrounding 116th, or you guys having, additional input?
I was just gonna ask Zach and put him on the spot here and really test him.
What do I think this would cost?
Yeah.
Oh, you found that number in your head?
I mean, I don't know how long this sidewalk is. What did you out there?
You can walk in the moon.
At least probably 20 grand.
20 grand?
At least, yeah, I'd say at least 20. Did you figure 1,000 square feet of asphalt, right? Yeah,
Well,
and then sidewalk,
we got about 600 feet of sidewalk and what, $30 square foot.
okay.
That number doesn't scare me, if that's.
I mean, it could be 20 to 50 probably.
Yeah, I'd
I'd
say,
say somewhere in there.
if you have an
I
ADA
can
ramp
give you a
there,
better number later. What's that?
if there's an ADA ramp involved, or we put those as a handicap parking spot,
Yeah, do a handicap, go for it, probably gonna be a ramp down there.
So if you keep the
the two at the
two
end,
at the end as a handicap spot, then you're.
We already have the ramp there.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So if we made the two at the end by King George, where we're already doing the handicap ramp as part of this project, handicap, and left those three or whatever that were added later
Without handicap.
without handicap, then we don't necessarily have to do ADA on that, right?
Yeah, it pretty much just be sidewalk.
Okay,
you know,
but we might have to do a stormwater thing.
So we can pay credit too, kind of there's different methods to be able to alleviate the concerns.
Okay.
so, I think I'd like to know the cost, for me, I'd like to know the cost. I wanna know if there's other projects that go on the chopping block because of this project. I'm not necessarily afraid of that number, but at the same time, if we're not fixing potholes to do this, I can't agree to that, right? But I also, did we ever circle back with Courtney Neron about some of the road type funding that she had been talking about?
We brought that up to her,
Yeah.
and it got lumped into that broadband thing that I was talking about.
Oh, it did? Yeah, okay, all right.
So, we have some options here, and, but bottom line is that, do we need to bring this back to council for a green light, or we already green lighted it?
Yeah, let's get,
The road
the
improvement,
numbers and come back and find out what,
Yeah.
yeah.
let's see what our options
Yeah,
are.
the people.
Yeah. See, if the apartment complex owners say no, then it's done anyway, right? So,
I mean, I already expressed to the residents that were here that, first we have to address the safety, right?
Yeah.
So we address the safety, and if we can come back and maybe add these, like, parking spots as a bulb out or a pull out, then it's a temporary inconvenience for a long-term safer solution, right? If we can come back in and put that.
Sure.
So, I mean, we can work on our end to try to come up with a plan, develop an agreement with the landowner, and then try to move it forward as just one of those projects that we're gonna try to, resolve in the future. But, yeah, I don't think we can sacrifice the safety of our residents.
Absolutely not.
So the bottom line is, let's get this on the agenda, for the full, for council meeting to really talk about, that this is an option that we want to use green light to explore. Okay?
Yeah.
And I think we need to do that, so, and make it clear that we are in fact moving forward with the existing project, to take care of the safety concerns, but, we want to be able to give you the green light to be able to, pursue this other possibility.
Yeah, we can talk about it on the 18th.
Okay. All right, that sounds good. Let's see here. Okay. That's it. I'll get out of here. Or did you have to officially adjourn this meeting?
No, because it's, we can't do motion.
Wait, hold on. I thought you were joking, are we really done? We're not gonna
Yeah.
talk about, because it was on the agenda?
No.
What do you want?
Oh, okay, all right.
What do you want to do?
I think we're done.
No, we'll do that.
Okay.
But, are we meeting virtually?
Well, that's.
Yeah, we need to
Let's
decide.
talk about that. I am concerned with the numbers. We know we're all vaccinated, but once we open it up, people are gonna be welcome to come in, the live meeting. We have protected the Zoom meeting for council meeting. I am more inclined to go back to a Zoom council meeting until we see where these numbers are going.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay?
Because now we know, even though we're vaccinated, we can infect our children just the same as if we weren't vaccinated.
No doubt about it. And why take that chance when we know how to do the Zoom? And I think that's what we should do. And we will play it by ear. And so, Ronnie, Mike, the next council meeting will be via Zoom
Can I
on the 18th.
Can I just talk real quick, because I had told Shauna, because she wanted to talk about my flyer and just this event, and because I caught confusion, can we just talk about that real quick?
No.
Yeah. Okay, so as we kind of all know, I put out a flyer, so on the 10th, there's going to be a taco truck and Kona Ice down at the park for a Deer Creek Dine Out fundraiser, okay?
Cool.
It is clear from this weekend that my social media presence deliberately caused quite a conversation. I think the conversation got heated. I think it's time to cool it all down. So Ken and I were discussing that we kind of personally thought it would be a really great opportunity to just invite people to come down to the park, have an ice cream cone or something. Fortuitously, Kona Ice is there, so it's actually going to be come have a snow cone on us, and just show support for a sense of community over contention, okay? Ken and I had that conversation, so one of the concerns, I believe Shauna raised that because we hadn't talked about it as a council, she felt like I might have represented that it was a council event. It's not, it's Ken and I, and I think it's a really good way to show support for Ken, and his family to say, you know what happened, we don't want that nonsense in here, right? And, without adding more fuel to the fire, without having Ken to, be re-victimized and, take it in a different direction, let's just have a positive cool down in the park, okay? Then, I personally, right, am holding listening sessions, because what I have gotten from a lot of this experience is that people feel really unheard. And I think it's important, since I am the one who's the most present on social media, that I am the one that says, I'm here to listen, and I want you to talk with me and come. Now, I, in my haste of trying to get this cooled down quickly, erroneously made one of the, well, let me just first say this. I first made the cool down event during the same event that I also organized and forgot. So, bad for me, but it was a happy mistake, as they say, right? So then I scheduled one of the listening sessions during council meeting. So I will correct that. We will have council meeting. It is not a way to divert people from attending the council meeting and causing people not to come and participate. I'm sure that's gonna be put out there, but no, it was my mistake. I will change the date.
Okay.
And then, I think it's a really important, what I would like to do is I think the listening sessions, I am hoping, it's gonna be by Zoom, I am hoping we will get a lot of participation and that I can bring back some synthesized information so that then at the town hall that we will have in September, which we really need to buckle down and get booked, right?
Yeah.
But that we will be able to address some of the concerns in a informative way at the town hall and also listen and engage with people, but have, you know, there could be concerns out there that we haven't even thought about. And so I really want to be able to bring that information. So I take some of the errors in the flyer on the chin. I deliberately didn't involve the council because it is not, it's not that. It really truly is, more, you know, I created kind of a mess and, I think it was a good mess. I think it was a needed mess, right? Sometimes we need agitation to move,
You
but,
didn't create
right?
that. The mess was created because somebody decided to try to mind around.
Whatever, a crime was perpetrated to which I got really pissed off about, so.
I was, you know, it was a personal thing with me, and we had to respond to it, so, yeah, and there was a whole lot of dialogue going back and forth.
Yeah.
Okay, but we want to move beyond that.
Exactly.
We want to move away from it. And I'm hoping that the people who want to engage in conversation, not just people who are in opposition to what we're doing, but people who want to know more and people who want to know, what we're doing as a community, and, we need to start talking about what kind of community we want to be.
Right.
You know, so we really want to draw some people in who have some different opinions about what's going on and where we see ourselves going in the future. That's the kind of dialogue that we hope that we can get out of the event as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
There we go. Okay.
all right.
What time on Saturday?
So, the 10th, and it's from 6:30 to 7:30, down at King City Park. I will, so we asked Ronnie not to, I sent Ronnie my flyer, and then we held the flyer back. I will resend it to Ronnie tomorrow, no?
No, it's.
Oh, because it's my event, no.
Well, no, so what happened was you told me to send it out. I sent it out to PC, planning commission,
Yeah.
councilors, and the HOAs.
Got it.
Yeah.
Perfect, so then we have to send Mia Kukla, Jamie Messab, and we're gonna send a new flyer tomorrow, and you'll get that. But the ice cream social is on the 10th. So the food trucks will be down at the park from 4:30 to 6:30. And then that's just the taco truck and the Kona Ice. And then, the food truck could stay if they want to, but then, just from 6:30 to 7:30 is when, our event will happen.
Okay, understood?
And just for the record, that's not a smoke cone.
Oh, shade, my God.
You're 100%.
I know, someone from Hawaii has to chime in.
I love it.
I know, on record, my God, there we go. Shade,
Okay, people, all right, let's go home. Let's get out of here.
Ron, you got?
Yeah,
I read through all this.
All right.
I've been in the sewer plant business, working for 5 or 6 different cities for 30 years.
Yep.
And I kind of know the kind of stuff that happens to public employees.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to say, I'm sorry for the negative comments for you guys. I'm sorry for the negative comments for you guys, and I'm sorry for the negative comments for you guys. You don't deserve it. And it was, you know, we just don't need that to move forward.
Right.
So,
Thank you, John.
Okay, thanks, John. Appreciate it very much. Okay.
I know there's a lot of.
You guys are wonderful, thank you for taking your time out of your busy days, I appreciate it very much.
I really, there's one coming here, I really love. Thank you.